I've come to an area called the Garden Tomb, not because more evidence points to it as being the actual place of Jesus' resurrection, but because its atmosphere feels more like what Jesus would have seen when he rose again from the dead. That day we celebrate as Easter. But was it a day of celebration for Jesus? Or was it mixed with other feelings as well?
You know, I've been away on this trip for nearly a month, and it'll be good to get home. I miss my family and my wife and kids and my friends, my home. You know, it's weird being away from the culture I know and the language I understand and the foods I eat. I want to get home, but I have more important things to do here. Jesus, I imagine, wanted to return to his Father, but he too had more important things to do. He had to prove to his disciples that he was God by dying and coming back to life after 3 days, just as he had promised. The Bible makes it very clear that Jesus died on the cross and the Roman guards stabbed Jesus with a spear. Normally they would break his legs to speed up the suffocation process that occurred on the cross, but there was no need to do so, the guards had assessed. Joseph from Arimathea and Nicodemus, both from the Sanhedrin, took Jesus and buried him in Joseph's brand new tomb. Roman guards were posted on the outside because they suspected the apostles would try to steal the body. It was clear he was dead.
After a Sabbath of rest, Sunday morning comes, Resurrection Day. In Christendom, the most glorious day of celebration. Jesus has risen. There is hope for eternity. But as I read over the gospel passages, you know what comes to mind? I don't read of that day being a day of joy, especially for Jesus, but a day of frustration. Look at the women who went to prepare Jesus' body with more spices. They obviously didn't believe that today, the third day, Jesus would rise again, because they were preparing him for more death. But when they entered the tomb, the angel said to them, "He's not here. He is risen." I detect a tone there on the angel's part. What are you doing here? Don't you remember his words? He said he would rise again from the dead. Now get going and meet him in Galilee. So the women go and tell the disciples, but they did not believe the women, because their words seemed to them like nonsense. Peter and John, though, decide to check it out. John said he saw the empty tomb and believed. Peter didn't get it. Peter didn't get it. Peter, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," Peter didn't get it.
Well, on the first Easter, on Sunday morning when he resurrected, the disciples' mood was not good. The disciples' mood was they were locked in for fear of the Jews. They were sad, as the two disciples on the road to Emmaus later said, "We'd hoped that it had been he who had redeemed Israel." So they were hopeless, they were sad, they were fearful, they were frustrated. The gospel story says the women stood outside the tomb crying after all that had just occurred. So Jesus appeared personally to Mary Magdalene. Jesus said, "Why are you crying?" When she finally recognized him, Jesus says, "Now go and tell the others I have risen. Meet me in Galilee."
2 times the women are told to tell the men to meet them all in Galilee. The group of men doubt their every word. So Jesus has to show up to the women himself. Why is it so hard to prove his resurrection? Then again, why weren't they camped out in front of the grave with their lawn chairs and cameras ready to capture the big event? Instead, the disciples hid, embarrassed that they followed Jesus, and he allowed himself to be crucified.
I think it was just so far out of the philosophical landscape and the possibilities that it just took that long for people to get it. Was Jesus frustrated by all that? He was awfully patient. He was awfully patient with it. I just think he understood that this was such a radical thought that people could not believe it.
Now the women, after seeing Jesus for themselves face to face, ran back to the disciples. We saw him. We really did. He's alive. He said to go to Galilee. And what did they all do? Nothing.
I don't think it surprised them in the least that they didn't do anything that he'd asked them to do. And it is such a juxtaposition in terms of what he accomplishes and their humanity.
Jesus even made a special trip to Thomas to convince him of the resurrection. We always attack Thomas and his doubt, when the truth is, everyone doubted.
I do believe that there was probably some frustration on Jesus' part. On the other hand, he lived with these guys. He knew they were slow. And so he knew they would ultimately get it.
If I had been Jesus and had resurrected and got the response that he got, I would have been disappointed. I spent 3.5 years with these guys. They said they called me the Son of God and the Messiah, and they didn't even get the main thing.
That frustration Jesus felt then has to be the same frustration he feels now. Compound that feeling 1 billion times over with all the information God has provided throughout history to people, and they still don't believe. While I detect a tone of frustration in Jesus and the angels, I also recognize something else: love.
Jesus came to the women a second time. He gave the disciples another chance, and another, and another. Even Thomas got a personal visit. Jesus did everything to make sure the people believed.
It's that part of the resurrection I most appreciate. Jesus giving his followers a second chance, staying patient with them despite their lack of belief. You know, as I look at that tomb, I thank God that he gave me hundreds of chances to believe until I finally saw the proof, my mind opening up, and I received him as my risen Lord.